Ladies and gentlemen, let's continue our afternoon session with Build to Rent, the master key to affordable housing. As Build to Rent has gained popularity in the past decades, we will dig deeper into how it impacts and reshapes the housing landscape and what is waiting for us down this road. Join me in welcoming our speakers on stage, and this session is moderated by Mersina Isidorou, General Manager of Cyprus Property Developers Association. Mersina and my dear speakers, the stage is yours.
Hello. Hi, I'm Mersina Isidorou, and I'm the General Manager of the Cyprus Developers Associations. It's great to see everyone here for a panel discussion titled Build to Rent, the master key to affordable housing. Today we're focusing on a very hot topic in the housing industry, the Build to Rent model. It's evident that Cyprus has a housing problem, and the increased demand with low supply increases, of course, the prices. This approach, where developers and investors create residential units specifically to rent rather than sell, is gaining traction globally as a potential solution to the affordability crisis. Build-to-rent schemes promises professional management, consistent quality, and possibly lower living costs. But we're here to explore a crucial question. Is build-to-rent really the solution we need for affordable housing? With recent government incentives, we have a unique opportunity to examine how real estate and government can collaborate to address these challenges and improve our communities. First up, Yannis Zinonos, Property and Public Affairs Manager at Exnes. Yannis is a powerhouse of knowledge in business management, real estate, and policy making. With his background in law and business, he has expertly managed over 100 million in real estate assets for Exnes. Today, Yannis will delve into the technical aspects of Build to Rent from the investor sides, providing us with a deep understanding of our intricacies and potential of this model. Next, we have Nicholas Karoulas at the end right there. He's the CEO of Karma Group. Nicholas is a visionary in the land development industry, having led the completion of 5,000 residential units, including the landmark Mythical Resort Complex, constituting of 400 units. His strategic approach and dedication to sustainable innovation have set high standards in the industry. Nicholas will share his vision for the Famagusta area, mainly, highlighting how Build to Rent can drive sustainable and affordable housing solutions in the region. Last but not least, Panikos Livadiotis, Managing Director of Lefteris Livadiotis & Sons Property Developers. With a diverse background in hotel management and real estate, Panikos has earned numerous international property awards for his group. His commitment to excellence and sustainable development has made a significant impact in Larnaca. Panikos will discuss his vision for affordable housing in Larnaca, emphasizing how Build to Rent can meet the community's needs and in Cyprus in general. Thank you all for being here today. Let's dive into the important conversation. Please join us in welcoming our esteemed panelists, Yannis Zinonos, Panikos Livadiotis, and Nicholas Karoulas. If you have any questions, feel free to ask during the discussion. Let's start. I will start with Yannis. Yannis, good afternoon. The Cyprus government recently introduced improved town planning incentives aimed at promoting affordable housing. Can you very briefly explain to our audience what is Build to Rent scheme in general in Cyprus?
Yeah, hi everyone, good afternoon. Well, first of all, before I will go to the details of the Build to Rent scheme as it has been announced by the government, I would like to say that this is a very positive step forward in addressing affordable housing issues. Build to Rent is something very new to Cyprus. It's also a cultural thing that majority of Cypriots used to be the owners of houses. So the rental housing was very limited compared to ownership, again, compared to other EU countries. So by introducing that scheme for first time, it shows that this specific market of, the rental housing market constitutes also one of the aspects, let's say, that could tackle the issues of the affordable housing in Cyprus. It's very simple. The more supply you have, the easiest is to reduce the rental prices. So in reality, what the government tried to do, it was to boost the supply, let's say, in order to facilitate, let's say, the high demand that occurred the past 3-4 years for many reasons. I will not enter into the reasons why we ended up with a shortage of rental units. This is a huge discussion that we could discuss maybe another time. I will try to be simple. What the government did, actually, was to provide incentives, additional density for developments. Obviously, you have to meet certain criteria related to the size of the plot and the minimum density of the plot. If I'm not mistaken, there are 2 schemes. One scheme provides that the plot should be at least of 800 square meters of net land, and the density should be equal to 1.2 or higher. And the second scheme, it provides that the plot size should be at least 2,000 square meters, and the minimum density should be at least 1 or equal to 1. Therefore, by defining the eligibility criteria for the plot, let's say, you can easily draw the map of Limassol and understand which areas are eligible. In reality, we are talking about, I'm going to make a reference to Limassol, which I'm based, I believe that the guys will refer to other cities as well. We are talking about the area which is located below the highway to the north, so from the highway to the coast. Well, apart from the bonus density, which is 45%, if you meet the criteria that I mentioned before for the size of the plot and the density, the developer gets, actually not the developer, the landlord gets some additional incentives which are related to tax, depreciation rates, etc. I think the Ministry of Interior prepared a very well document, a guide which explains in detail what is eligible and what the benefits are. But to put it in simple words, if you meet the criteria of the plot, you get extra density and some additional tax incentives. In return, however, you have to provide those units that will be constructed based on the additional density at affordable rental prices, which the prices are defined by the land registry. Therefore, if someone wants to develop such a project, they have to take into consideration also the rental prices those are defined in the certain area and do their business models. I would say that the incentive scheme as it was announced is not the best, but what we can keep from that is that it introduces for first time in the Cyprus housing market the build-to-rent scheme, which is something good. It was announced initially back in December last year or January this year, I don't remember exactly. And since then, a couple of weeks ago, there was already the first reform that improved even further the scheme. Again, despite there was an improvement, it wasn't to that extent that we wish to see.
Thank you, Yangos. Now, build-to-rent schemes have been applied in other countries for some decades now. Do you have any examples that you can give from other countries? And how do you see the newly introduced improved scheme in Cyprus? Are the new incentives that were recently announced satisfactory in addressing the goals of the build-to-rent model in Cyprus?
It should be very satisfactory, I guess, for the developers, because the way it was structured, it actually supports developers to do that. But again, there is an issue there. Developers don't want to be landlords. They don't want to make a huge capital expenditure and rent it out. So the scheme has to be redesigned a bit in order to address the needs of the investors. It's not investor-oriented, I would say. It's mostly developer-oriented. But as I said earlier, the positive thing is that we have something to discuss now, and we can continue the discussion with the government, the Ministry of Interior, to improve it even further. Now, in regards to other EU countries, we did a study, we carried out a study, and we tried to compare various models of build-to-rent scheme in other EU countries. In purpose, we choose to use other EU countries because we are participating in the EU, we are a member state. Therefore, it's much more easier for the authorities here to adopt, let's say, examples from other EU countries. What we realize is that each country implements a different housing policy, but all of them, they have certain incentives. The most notable incentive in the EU, I would say, is Spain, which it provides for a lower VAT rate if you buy an apartment and you rent it out for a minimum period of 3 years. It's similar to what we have in Cyprus with the first residency, but it also, I mean, because we get the 5% of VAT rate, but in Spain it also applies to the case where you commit to rent it for a certain period of time. Why this is important? It is important because it lowers the initial expenditure of the investor. Think that let's say that you buy one apartment for 100,000 euros and you pay 19% VAT, and compare it to the case that you buy the apartment and you pay 5% VAT. So the cost is lower, therefore the return for the investor is much more higher.
Okay, talking about investors, an investor should compare the yield of an investment with Cypriot bonds. As the current scheme has been announced, do you think it's worthwhile for an investor to look into it and start maybe investing in it?
I wouldn't say that they have to compare it, but I mean the most safe comparison, I would say, is the Cyprus bonds. Cyprus bonds, if I'm not mistaken, right now is around from 4 to 4.5%. Therefore, the investment in the real estate, Cyprus bond is zero risk. Real estate, despite this is a safe investment, there are risks. Therefore, any investment should be significantly higher compared to the Cyprus bonds. We can compare it also to bonds provided by the banks. If I'm not mistaken, again, we are talking about, I will not refer to the names, but the 3 bigger banks in Cyprus, they offer bonds from 7 to 8%. Therefore, again, it's better to invest in this kind of bonds instead of real estate. If we would like to make it more attractive to the investors, we need to improve it a bit. And I believe that the key point here is to introduce a lower VAT rate in the case that you buy a property and you put it in the market for a certain period of time for rental.
Thank you, Yankos. Now turning to the current landscape in Famagusta, our next panelist, Nicolas, can shed light on how the build-to-rent model fits into this evolving market. Nicolas.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mersina, for your introduction. Before I talk about the build-to-rent scheme, its importance, and some suggestion how we can implement this scheme and to have benefits in the Famagusta region, I would like us to see the root of the problem. Increase of the housing prices. Why? From my point of view, Cyprus is missing proper urban planning with a long-term vision and bureaucracy. Bureaucracy, those two things are the main problems that today we are here and we are discussing about the scheme which is going to solve the problem of rental prices and increase of property houses to lower to middle class people who doesn't afford to buy something very expensive, especially in the current conditions of the market and the prices that we have today. Even though Cyprus is a small country, each region has its own characteristics, its own small ecosystem, and definitely they need urban planning considering what are the main factors that influence their own markets. Coming to Paralimni and Ayia Napa region, which is an economy mainly driven by tourism, what is influenced the increase of the prices is, first of all, we are talking about a region which is rely on tourists. So tourists, they are mainly buying holiday homes, or they are putting, we have properties for short-term rental, which is number one priority today, as the return on investment is much higher rather than a long-term rent. This is definitely affecting the prices, and we have the locals who doesn't afford to pay so high rents for a property, especially nearby to the tourist area. The second factor which is affecting our prices is the workforce. Since the majority of our economy is in the tourism, we have a lot of foreigners and even locals that they work in the tourist industry that they are looking for accommodation. If you see today our zones and the plan by government, you will realize that there is not a defined area or the proper zones for landowners or even as developers and investors that we can have proper buildings to accommodate workforce for mainly tourist industry and even for other sectors as well. So there is mainly Prodaras area and Ayia Napa, there is density like 60-70% to build nice, beautiful hotels within 6-7 floor buildings, but there is no zones that can build affordable accommodation for the workforce. So this is one of the major problems, and I think nobody paid attention so far about solving this issue, which has immediate and direct effect to the locals, to the property prices, and this is one of the main reasons that locals today, they are struggling to find a proper home for them.
Nicolas, in a nutshell, what measures do you think can be taken after hearing you to ensure that the build-to-rent developments remain sustainable and attractive to long-term tenants, and especially to the locals, even during the off-peak seasons?
I hear a lot about the off-peak seasons. Even though we are a touristic area, I think the area of Famagusta has the potential to be all year round, maybe not with the same volumes of visitors, but definitely we can do that. Build-to-rent scheme, I think is a scheme that cannot serve today our area. There is not, first of all, bureaucracy is a problem. It takes 1 year to take a permit, then 2 years to build a project. So we are discussing about scarcity of properties in the market. We need immediate supply of new properties in order to drop the rental prices and the property prices in general. And the scheme is going to actually, we'll have properties in the market in 3 years, which is really doesn't help us today. If you see the area, you will see that there is very low density in many strategic locations, locations that today exist buildings which they need completely renovation or to be taken down and build another building. However, because you have very low density, like 30%, even 35 is the maximum you can get, it's not in the interest of landowners to invest such a kind of money to build so few units and sell them to affordable prices for the locals, or to rent it in a lower rental prices in comparison to the market. Because if you rent a property in the short term, you definitely get more. So basically what the market needs, it's, and in my opinion also, we have to be more flexible with that scheme, is to see each area, what are the needs, do a market analysis, what are the planning zones, what are the areas that you have to force this scheme and implement this scheme in order to help find accommodation for the workforce, staff for the tourists, for the local young couples, and etc. And give the incentives to developers to proceed with like mixed developments that will have residential and commercial usage, a lot of green areas, commercials as well, that is very necessary for all these people, and without putting a lot of restrictions in every single thing that we try to do in such a development.
Thank you, Nicolas. Now back to Panicos. Your company mainly operates in Larnaca.
Yes.
Larnaca has seen significant development and growth in recent years. How do you see the build-to-rent model fitting into the current landscape of Larnaca's real estate market?
Okay, before I talk about Larnaca, I want to say a little, 2 seconds. I partly agree and partly disagree with my colleagues. Just my opinion, just to give my feedback on a certain point. Even though my friend Yangos here mentioned that the scheme was mentioned is made for developers, I think I can say that if that was the case, then we'll see a lot of applications already made. And from my understanding, still we don't like the scheme. Because of the audience to understand, some people are not aware of the scheme. It's a scheme to build and keep properties and rent them to affordable rates. The efforts are been amazing to come to a scheme at this point, but still the scheme needs, as you correctly say, is a raw material that needs some more work. At this point, it's not attractive and it's not giving us any incentives as developers to invest the way it's been created. So having said that, going into Larnaca needs, like all the other areas, which I will agree, every area in Cyprus has a microclimate, like a microeconomy. So in Famagusta area, they need workers. In Larnaca, we have younger, let's say, young couples, so people who cannot have, in the average, in the middle class. So we need this housing to keep the prices of the rent where they are, because everybody complains. You can see in the media, you can see everywhere they complain in Limassol that the rents keep going up and they're not affordable by the locals, which is very true. So by injecting in the market in Larnaca these units, yes, it will keep the rent prices low and even give the people with a lower income the opportunity to rent. But if it happens in 3 years, we have a long way to go. So we need to find a solution for Larnaca and for other regions more immediately, and not just wait 3 years to be able to deliver these units to you.
So one of the main aspects for us to consider is bureaucracy and how buildings could be up faster.
Correct. How can expedite this solution? Bureaucracy is one thing, and we can very easily create a fast track. So if a government has a need of something, usually creates a fast track of this. So if two industries have a problem, the most important problem to be solved, it can be expedited. So we wish it can be fast tracked, and we wish it can be a solution with less bureaucracy.
Okay.
But one point that I also wanted to make, which I agree, don't, because usually when people hear the word affordable housing, affordable rent, in their mind it comes some ugly building that is with no balconies, affordable housing, and it's just an image that has a stigma to it. The stigma of where do you live? I live in this, how do you call them in England? Social housing. So there is a stigma coming with this word, affordable housing. So nobody wants to go to school and say, we don't want to label zip codes. So if I say, where do you live? I live in building X, and automatically you know that this building is affordable housing, it has a negative effect. So we wish one of our suggestions to make them into mixed use, means that somebody who spent $500,000 can live in the same area of somebody who spent, let's say, 100,000. It's a challenge, but it can be done, and I have some suggestions on the matter on it later. Yes.
Thank you.
Just to make a short comment on this thin line between social housing and affordable housing. Yes, you are absolutely right. Here we are talking about affordable housing and not social housing. Social housing refers to the obligation of the state to provide accommodation to those in need. Affordable housing refers to the case where even people with some good income cannot afford to rent or buy a property. Therefore, yes, it should be separated. The discussion for the social housing should be completely separated from the discussion about affordable housing. If I'm not mistaken, if for the projects to be licensed and considered as build-to-rent projects, they have to include these facilities. Therefore, I think from that point of view, what the government is trying to do is not to, yes, as you said, to create a ghetto or to create a community which will be pointed out, yes. Obviously, I didn't say that I didn't say that.
I just wanted to make clear that it was not tailor-made for the developers.
It's not tailor-made. It needs improvement, but it's developer-oriented. It's not investor-oriented.
Maybe the idea was for the developers, but at the end of the day, it doesn't serve its purpose.
On that note, talking about social housing and affordable housing, the scheme that was announced is for a specific family incomes, and mostly it's for the lower class. If I'm not mistaken, it's up to 50, the higher cap is up to 50,000 per family for a year. Do you think that that the government should expand this in the middle class also? That's a question for all of you, actually. And we have silence.
I have my answer, but
Let's see, go.
okay, definitely should be expanded. Obviously, as from the point of view of the, let's say, the vendor or the investor, it should be expanded so we have more consumers. There is more people who can be eligible for this product. But on the other hand, then it might not serve its purpose. So it's a double-edged knife. By expanding it, you get more people. But as you get to serve more people, but it might not be serving the reason it was made for. So
I think we should isolate the income, middle or low class or high class or whatever. For me, it's very simple. It's supply and demand. Put more rental units in the market to lower the rents. It's simple as that. If you enter into a discussion what the middle class could afford today, and if you see the statistics of the statistical services, despite the living cost in Cyprus has been skyrocketed the past 20 years, still the same salary caps are considered as middle class, which is not the case. Therefore, let's see how the market works. When there is a demand, you have to boost supply. If we boost supply, we will have lower rentals. If we have lower rentals, the rentals will be affordable. It's very simple.
Thank you. We have about 1.5 minutes left. If there's any questions that you... Thank you.
I think,
Hello guys, I'm Nicholas. I have a good question for all of you actually. I'm a total beginner when it comes to real estate. What skills should I focus on in order to be able to manage properties, like in general?
I think you're in the wrong panel. To manage properties? I think it's totally... to manage properties, you mean in the affordable rent scheme or in general? In general.
You have to have a very good network
Organization.
to set up a new company, go reach out people that they have projects. I don't know. I actually didn't understand the question a lot. Could you please clarify?
No, I'm asking in general, like what skills should I have in order to be able to manage properties? Like, as the lady said, organization, like something like that. Like, what should I focus on to be able to start?
Yangos, you allow me. If you would like to get into the property market and you have this passion, even though you doesn't have the skills and etc., the first thing to do is to start from somewhere. Where is somewhere? There's so many companies in the market, so many real estate brokers, developers. So if you believe on it and you believe that you can get your chance, I think it's the first thing to do is to start from somewhere. You cannot go to the top level from one day to another, I think. And you get the experience through the years.
Hello, yes, this works. In relation to the scheme of the panel, I think the incentives are not good enough because you have an increased risk of people not paying the rent and an increased risk of making damage to it. So the scheme should be greatly improved and given some real incentives. Regarding the other things said, I think all of you and a lot of people who are on this conference should push the government to actually vote the new law on real estate property management. There's a new law, Νόμος Αγγίνητης Ιδιοκτησίας, that's on the parliament for about 2 years and goes nowhere. And everybody has to work with a law that's about, 30, 40 years old. And I think this puts a lot of pressure on not being able to develop the market good enough.
If I may answer on this, I think there is nobody here who doesn't agree, who disagrees with you. We all agree 100%. What the gentleman is mentioning is that in Cyprus, collecting the communal fees, collecting the rent, collecting anything that has to do with the property is very difficult to implement if the tenant doesn't want to pay the rent, doesn't want to pay the communals. So the new law, yes, you are right, it needs to be implemented to make it into much more easy or effective to collect this. Because imagine having buildings with people initially intending to pay rent and then not paying their rent, and then you have whole communities saying that if Nicolas is not paying his rent, I'm not going to pay my rent, and nobody pays the rent. Definitely, it needs fine-tuning to change things on the way the rental market works, and to be able to evict people who don't pay. And this will keep them more sustainable in the investment. So at least my answer, I agree with your comment, and it's something that we are all trying to improve for this.
It's not just collecting the rent and common expenses. The law should also force people to maintain older buildings, because if older buildings are maintained...
To maintain what?
Older buildings.
Older buildings, yes.
Because this will allow affordable rent, because an older building, for somebody who doesn't have a high income, if they can afford a lower quality or older building, they can go and live there, provided it's not falling apart. It's not just common expenses and rents. I think you should also push in this respect. Even though you are developers, but...
I have, but you can...
If I'm not mistaken, the law, which is more than 10 years sitting in the parliament, my first job was parliamentary associate. I have been working 10 years there. And it has been discussed in the parliament since I was there, like 10 years ago. So it's more than 10 years. The political parties, they need to take decisions. The members of the parliament, they need to vote and approve this piece of legislation. It's a very good piece of legislation. It tackles everything that you mentioned. But unfortunately, it seems that there is a lack of political will to do so. Therefore, yes, there should be a combined effort from the association of developers. I don't know if there is an association of landlords, but anyway, from all the stakeholders to have this law approved soon, it will improve things.
For clarity of things, though, just to give you my feedback on the second part of your question, maintaining the older buildings can be, again, a double-edged knife, because if an older building is not earthquake, anti-seismic construction, the least you want is to spend time, money, and effort on a building to be for affordable families, and that doesn't meet the criteria or the code to be safe, or not energy sustainable and not sustainable at all. So our point of view on my point of view, for your second part of the question, is that it's crucial also for these people, even at the lower level, who want to have affordable rent, to be staying in new or relatively new properties, and not just fix or put makeup on all the properties that are not meeting the safety criteria. If it's 50-year-old building and not earthquake, let's say, structure, trying to just make it affordable, and God forbid what happened in other countries happened here. So this is...
I have a comment on that. It's, in my opinion, you need to consider both. First of all, at EEC, I think they took the initiative to pass a law regarding old and not well-maintained building, and now they are obliged them to renovate them and fix them so they don't have the issues like falling balconies that are falling down because they are not well-maintained, etc. So this is something in the pipeline to fix it. Going back to the property management communal fees that you mentioned, there is a fund, a part of the money of the communals remain in a fund, that this fund, they are using it to maintain well-done buildings. So the only issue here is to find the formula legally to collect the communals without any delays and without struggling at the end of the day. But this is something that the way they are doing it now, I think is on the way to be fixed. Okay? And you need these old buildings to be well maintained, because there is people that they don't afford to rent even from new buildings, that even the rent can be attractive. You need to fill these properties also, because if you take into consideration the, let's say, example, Nicosia Center, is so many old buildings there empty, and they fix the Magariou Street, and they do nice stuff, infrastructure, and you see the buildings empty. Is not really efficient the way. So why not to don't fill these buildings as well? It's not about only new buildings.
The monitor keeps flashing red. That means we're out of time. We will take only 2-3 questions, because unfortunately we're coming to an end. And we will be outside if there's anyone else that wants to ask something. The lady there on the second row, please.
Hi guys, very interesting panel. But unfortunately I haven't read the whole proposal. So the question is, do they plan to restrict the rent that the investor can charge?
Do they plan
to restrict how much rent can the investor, the landlord, charge?
Yes. Let's collect all the questions.
Okay. The gentleman behind you. Yes, please.
Hello. So build to rent is something new to me. It's something that I've heard just now. And from what I understand, it's a scheme that will take place in roughly 3 years from now. Is that correct?
No. We said that it's a scheme that is valid today, but in case we would like to use these incentives to get affordable properties in our new projects, if, for example, we need 1 year to get the permits and then 2 years to finish the construction, the property for the tenant will be ready in 3 years, realistically.
Okay, so for that tenant, so for the person who wants to rent somewhere and live alone, for example, or whatever, what would you suggest, based on your expertise, that a middle-class person should do today, not in 3 years from now? Because if effectively this comes out in 3 years for us, then what we should do now? That's the question.
Okay. We hold it and have one more?
No, we'll hold it, we get the last
Okay.
question from the
Noted.
gentleman behind and we answer all of it. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah, hi. I just want to go back to the initial point made by Yangos. Developers don't want to become landlords, right? So in the event where these properties are you're gonna have to get an investor involved to take on the property to rent out. As we've seen advertised around Cyprus, there's different contractors advertising properties that are buy to rent with yields up to 8%. Now, if inflation is at 5% and the return on investment is 8%, then good deal. So if the return on investment is higher than the inflation, then it's a good deal. You get to keep money into your pocket. However, as we've seen historically, there are crisis cycles that happen between every 8 to 12 years. Historically, everything goes up. So if you're a long-term investor, it doesn't matter whether you invest now or at a low point. So my question to you is, how long do you expect these yields, the return on investment per se, from an investor's point of view, to be profitable and attractive in the next 5 years?
I will try to answer as many as possible. Well, yes, there are restrictions. Let's say that you have a plot of land, you are eligible to construct 100 apartments. You get extra density 45%, so this will become 145 apartments. I'm just rounding up the numbers. The 45%, these 45 units that you get as a bonus, you have to rent them out at an affordable rental price, which is defined by the land registry, which is around 30% than the market price, for a minimum period of 6 years. In addition to that, out of the 100 apartments, which you are allowed anyway, you have to rent out 20% at market price. So you are allowed to sell 80%, you have to rent from what you are initially allowed to 20% at market price, and the rest, 45%, at 30% lower than the market price for a minimum period of 6 years. For those 45 units that you rent at a lower price, you get certain tax incentives, which more or less brings it to the same level. Well, I mean, you can see many kind of advertisements. When you are going to invest in something, you have to take consideration the area, the developer, the quality of the building, the rental prices in the area. I don't know if you can hit 7 or 8 or 9 or 10%. This is a matter of the investor and his team to analyze the actual market at the given time and take into consideration as well all the risks that may come after 3, 4, 5 years. As the market stands today, it seems that significantly high returns will remain in the rental market for the next 3, 4 years, I would say. However, this is my personal perspective in the matter. But again, it's on each investor to decide how, when, and where to invest in the real estate.
We're out of time. Thank you for being here and listening to us. If there's any more questions and we can answer, I will be outside. I'm not sure if I can answer to all of you because I have a broad knowledge but not specific. And we hope we'll see you again in the next expo.
Thank you.
Thank you.